minute can open your eyes. One book can open your world. Knowledge gives you power. Read and rise higher. 9R Tree. Better life begins in a book.
Hello, I'm Sebastian. Welcome to 9R Tree's podcast. Today, I will summarize and review the book. War by Bob Woodward is an inside account of how the United States confronts the most dangerous global crises of the era, with a sharp focus on the grinding conflict in Ukraine and the cascading shocks in the Middle East. Drawing on deep reporting, confidential documents, and extensive interviews across the Pentagon, the National Security Council, the CIA, and diplomatic channels, Woodward maps the choices, trade-offs, and tensions that define modern statecraft. The narrative follows the day-to-day cadence of wartime decision-making, from the Situation Room to Allied capitals, revealing how senior officials weigh escalation risks, calibrate military aid, and manage domestic political constraints while navigating uncertain intelligence. Through vivid scenes and methodical reconstruction of key meetings, war shows how leaders frame red lines, maintain alliances, and attempt to deter adversaries without stumbling into a wider conflict. The result is a granular portrait of power under maximum pressure and a stark ledger of costs, limits, and consequences. I will give you key takeaways from this book. Firstly, inside the war cabinet and the mechanics of decision-making, Woodward opens the black box of the United States national security apparatus as it responds to a live, high-stakes war. Readers see how the President, the National Security Advisor, and the Secretaries for Defense and State Structure choices set priorities and discipline the flow of intelligence. Meetings are layered, iterative, and often contentious. Analysts build options menus that ladder from low-risk steps to actions that might trigger reprisal. Lawyers frame what can be justified under domestic and international law. Intelligence officers grade confidence levels and flag gaps. Woodward reconstructs these scenes to show how subtle wording in a memo or a risk matrix can tilt outcomes. He captures the personal styles that shape momentum, whether a cautious preference for coalition consensus or a more forward-leaning instinct that pushes timetables. The book also shows how mistakes are audited, how dissent is handled, and how leaders use time as a tool, letting tempers cool or synchronizing announcements with allied moves for maximum effect. Secondly, escalation management, deterrence, and red lines with Russia. A core thread is the relentless effort to support Ukraine while avoiding a direct United States-Russia clash. Woodward documents the drawn boundaries around weapons ranges, targeting assistance, and the pace of capability upgrades. He shows how planners model Russian perceptions and second-order effects, such as cyber retaliation or energy coercion against Europe. The narrative follows debates over long-range fires, advanced air defenses, and the choreography of training, maintenance, and spare parts that make a capability stick. There is also a granular look at messaging, from carefully worded public statements to private backchannels meant to clarify intent and reduce miscalculation. Woodward details how intelligence on Russian posture, nuclear signaling, and industrial capacity informs these choices, and how Allied actions either tighten or loosen overall deterrence credibility. The chapter underscores a paradox of modern deterrence strategy. To prevent escalation, leaders must accept a managed degree of risk and uncertainty, and they must revisit that choice repeatedly. Thirdly, the arsenal of democracy and the logistics of sustaining Ukraine. War explains that delivering military aid is as much about factories and freight as it is about headlines. Woodward follows the supply chain from production lines and stockpiles to railheads and forward depots. He unpacks the bottlenecks that slow delivery, including regulatory hurdles, maintenance backlogs, and training pipelines for new systems. The book examines the trade space between drawing down United States inventories and contracting new production, and how industry lead times push strategy to match what can actually be delivered. Woodward shows how battlefield data feeds the cycle, with Ukrainian performance shaping future packages and tactics. He traces the role of Europe, Canada, and other partners in financing, replacing, and co-producing equipment, as well as the incremental moves that grow Ukraine air defense network and strike options. Throughout, He highlights the hard math of sustainment fuel, munitions, and spare parts, and the political capital required to keep those flows moving through seasonal offensives and defensive resets. Fourthly, Allied diplomacy and the balance between regions. Woodward places the Ukraine conflict within a wider diplomatic map that includes NATO cohesion, European politics, and security shocks in the Middle East. He reports how Washington works to lock in long-term commitments from allies, secure basing and access, and coordinate training missions and industrial expansion. The narrative tracks delicate conversations with governments wary of escalation or facing domestic opposition, and it explores the quiet work of intelligence sharing that knits coalitions together. A parallel storyline shows how crises overlap, as attention and resources must be balanced between Europe and the Middle East, while maintaining deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. Woodward details how senior officials synchronize messages, sanction packages, and arms transfers so that moves in one theater do not unintentionally weaken deterrence in another. The book captures the human element of alliance management as well, from late-night calls to emergency summits, where trust and credibility are earned or squandered in real time. Lastly, domestic politics, oversight, and the cost of persistence. War is also a study in democratic constraint. Woodward chronicles funding fights, oversight hearings, and the influence of public opinion on the pace and shape of support to partners in the field. He shows how the administration navigates spending caps, continuing resolutions, and shifting bipartisan coalitions, while making the case that strategic patience requires consistent resources. The book examines the role of veterans groups, diaspora communities, and civic organizations in sustaining political will, and it covers the media battles that frame successes and setbacks. Woodward captures the tension between secrecy and transparency, revealing how officials disclose just enough to build support without exposing sensitive capabilities or operational plans. He also measures the opportunity cost of war as budgets, attention, and diplomatic bandwidth are redirected. The through line is that endurance in a long conflict requires a durable domestic consensus, and that consensus must be renewed repeatedly as conditions on the ground and at home evolve. In conclusion, War is essential reading for engaged citizens, policy professionals, military officers, business leaders, and students who want to understand how modern wars are managed by a democracy under pressure. Woodward offers unmatched access, a disciplined eye for verifiable detail, and a steady narrative that connects battlefield reality to the levers of power in Washington and allied capitals. The book can benefit your life by sharpening your judgment about risk, enabling you to decode official statements, and giving you a practical framework for how big decisions are actually made when time is short and stakes are high. If you work in leadership, operations, or crisis management, the lessons transfer directly to building teams, sequencing actions, and communicating under uncertainty. Choose this book over others because it blends narrative momentum with documentary precision, situates events within a decade of Woodward reporting on American power, and delivers the granular, sourced detail that turns headlines into real understanding. If you would like to support Bob Woodward, you can buy the book through the Amazon link I've provided in the podcast description. After reading the book, please let me know what you think and share your thoughts. See you around.
1 minute can open your eyes. One book can open your world. Knowledge gives you power, read and rise higher. 9 tree, better life begins in a book.